infrastructure investment. I think this is a very typical and a feature story. And maybe we will start the interview, and maybe first I would like to ask about with the Chinese cooperation, and you mentioned about the cooperation like sharing the experience, like Canada's practice. Are there some specific or practical cooperation between the China counterparts, like with Mr. Lou Jiwei, like are there some further opportunities for joint investment?
There's absolutely possibility for joint investments over time. We maintain an active dialogue with the NSSF and with the other major global institutional investors from China. So, CIC, SAFE, and many of the other entities. So, and over time, there will be opportunities for investment. We've invested in situations with CIC in the past around the world, and we've also sold things to CIC as well. So I don't think we've bought anything off them yet, but but there's an active dialogue where we've bought and sold things, and same with the NSSF. We've maintained an active dialogue over the years with them as they've started to look to do more international investment. But generally, their international investments through funds.
Yeah, and I also noticed that like some other international investment funds like Bridgewater and Blackstone have also approached the National Council for Security Fund, maybe for some further cooperation opportunities. And we also know for the Chinese side, there is no similar real institution like CPPIB with such professionalism and independency to investment with the fund. So what's your prediction for the next step of the Chinese side's reform? Do we need to establish a similar CPPIB in China?
Well, so I think the NSSF was established close to the same time as CPPIB, and I think at the senior levels has had some excellent. I only know the senior levels, but they've had some excellent management over time. Some very sensible, very prudent, conservative management, and they've grown enormously since 2000. So they've also grown a lot, and the returns have been okay over that time as well. The returns have been pretty good. So I think the NSSF is about as close as you get to CPPIB in China. The difference is the amount of active investment and the amount of overseas investment that it's permitted to do under its mandate, and that depends on we have our liabilities are very, very far out, so the liability structure may be different, and also there are already institutions in China that do a lot of overseas investment. Most of CIC's investment is overseas, so we don't have that structure in Canada. So we don't. There's no sovereign wealth fund in Canada. So it's a different setup.
Yeah. And the next question, I'd like you to talk more about the whole picture of the global infrastructure investment.
Yeah.
We know now there are many new game changers like China proposal of One Belt One Road, China's establishment of AIIB, and also there is Donald Trump that he plans to invest more than $1 trillion in the United States domestic infrastructure investment. Yeah. All these phenomena, how it will influence the global infrastructure investment, and will CPPIB increase the infrastructure investment? If so, and which area, which industry, which sector?
Yeah, so I said earlier, I think one of the biggest constraints for global infrastructure investors has been the availability of opportunities that are big enough and that are well structured enough. So there have been too few opportunities, and they've been competed incredibly aggressively. So pricing has got very, very tight. So we've struggled in the last couple of years 3 or 4 years to find many new investments that are of size because of that. There's just so much money chasing so few opportunities. So I think one of the good things as an investor is going to be with the developments in Canada, in the US, the AIIB, etc. It should produce a lot more opportunities. Because there's always been a mismatch. Lots of governments want more infrastructure, and there's lots of investors who want to buy it. But there's a huge gap of understanding between the two about what these investors will actually buy. And I think that's now been understood. There's more smart people in these infrastructure agencies and banks who really understand how to structure these projects. I mean, a simple example is, it's not worth our while looking at $50 million infrastructure opportunities. We've got to, with a small team, we've got to look at things that are $500 million, $1 billion, $2 billion of equity. And so you can package together a lot of small ones to create one big one. And that's what some of these opportunities are. The second thing is, it's really complicated to de-risk these projects, to understand all the risks and who should be carrying the risks on these projects. And so if all of that work is done ahead of time, then it's much easier for institutional investors to invest in those projects. So packaging them by size, packaging and understanding the risks that are involved, and making sure there are contracts and risk-sharing arrangements in place for those assets. So there's sufficient risk-adjusted return in the investment, and that also is a good thing. So I think all of this is good. Ultimately, governments need to explain to their people that if they need private capital, they need to explain that they need private capital. They need to explain why they need private capital. And then they need to explain that there needs to be, private capital needs a proper, decent return on its capital. And so those are things that governments also struggle to do over time, because trying to explain to someone they're going to have to pay for the road they drove on before without the toll on it, or they need to pay more for the power that they're getting. These things are tough political messages to your population, and so it's held up many infrastructure projects around the world.
Yeah, and we know that CPPIB is kind of a partner of AIIB, because your president, CPPIB, was invited to Mr. Jin Liqun's roundtable last year for the AIIB's preparation and some work. And we also know that Canada has already announced to join the AIIB. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned earlier, in that room, that Canada is planned to establish a Canada Infrastructure Investment Bank.
Yeah.
And could you elaborate?
Investment bank? Is this exactly?
Infrastructure bank.
Yeah. Infrastructure bank. Hasn't copied it exactly from China. So only one eye.
They've only proposed this, so there's, they have a new name whenever they actually,
Yeah, I think it's Canada Infrastructure Bank. Yeah, but yes, sorry.
Yeah, so what kind of role of CPPIB will play in AIIB between China and Canada, and also the Canada's future infrastructure bank?
So there's no formal role. We're an independent arm's length investment organization, but because we're a leading infrastructure investor in the world and we have a lot of expertise, we've offered that up to the relevant people in the Canadian government, as we have offered it up to the relevant people in other countries where we invest. With AIIB, I think Minister Jin is a very smart guy, very experienced, and knows and is assembling a strong team of people around him to lead that organization. So we have we have dialogue with the AIIB as well, but they have a lot of very experienced people, so they I think they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in terms of the portfolio of CPPIB, there are more than 40% is in United States, in the U.S. market. And what's the percentage of this, of more than 40% are in the U.S. infrastructure investment? And will you increase your investment in U.S. infrastructure?
So that number I don't have off the top of my head. We might be able to get it for you. But I think my guess is it's say $3 or $4 billion is my guess. So it's several $1 billion in U.S. infrastructure. So we have several $billion in toll roads and in power, and in some other assets, ports as well. So will we increase? Yeah. If I said the main problem that's held us back is just lack of the opportunities at reasonable valuations. And if there's more supply of opportunities, that's got to be great for us. We're definitely looking forward to increasing our infrastructure investment in the U.S. as the opportunities come along.
Yeah, and also Chinese investors and contractors are also the main players of global infrastructure industry. But we know that in your previous interview you mentioned that CPPIB could will take at most 3 years risk in terms of the infrastructure investment. That CPPIB will undertake at most 3 years risk in terms of the infrastructure investment.
Not sure I said that. I don't know what that was.
From another financial media, 21st Century.
Oh.
At that time, maybe.
I wouldn't trust that.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
But we know that for the
infrastructure, I don't know what that was for. I don't know.
4.5 or
no. When we invest in infrastructure, actually, we'll invest for very long term. So. We'll invest. I mean, when we actually build the financial model, we'll build it out till the end of the concession. So if the concession's 45 years for a toll road, that's what we'll build out the model all the way to the 45 years. We presume we will hold it for its entire life.
4 to 5 years?
45.
45.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is my question.
Maybe the 3 came from me saying something like.
Okay, because I was wondering because most of the infrastructure projects takes much longer than so-called 3 or 4 years.
We're very, very long term.
Very, very long time.
Yeah.
So do you think that the Chinese like pension funds should also invest in infrastructure projects, domestic or overseas?
So you have to have a specialist team who can really understand the risks, and if you're being paid enough for those risks, then yes. But the first thing is to really understand them. So do you understand the simple thing like a toll road? Do you understand the risks to traffic on that toll road? Do you understand the parallel routes and what might happen to traffic on the toll road over time? Do you understand how autonomous vehicles might change traffic on the road over time? So these are things. If you're going to invest for 45 years, you need to have you need to look out a long way at what the long-term trends are and really understand them and take a view as to whether you are being adequately rewarded for that and the price you're paying. And so, yes, I mean, I think investing in infrastructure is a good asset class, but you really need to, if you're going to invest direct, you need to have an expert team doing it.
Yeah, the last question is about China's economy. So what's your evaluation and prospect of Chinese economy in 2017? And recently, especially for the first quarter, and many Chinese economies are cautiously optimistic about it. So what's your opinion, and what are the sectors and industry that you have confidence, and what are the opportunities and risks that are overestimated?
Well, yeah, so since I've been here end of last week, I've seen several positive economic reports from people on China, which is unusual for the last couple of years, and that the economists have been more cautious. We've continued to just invest and take a long-term view, but I think there's quite a lot of optimism for this year in China, and I think the important thing is the stability that it will allow policymakers in China a stable environment in which to continue reforms. So there's lots of reforms that need to be continued, and I think macroeconomic stability gives people the calm to be able to continue with those reforms. And if we see those reforms are really good for our long-term investment. We're not investing just for 2017. We're investing for 2027, 2037. And if the reforms happen this year at a faster pace because things are calm, and that's great.
Yeah, what about the sectors and industry?
Sectors and industries, again, we're relatively diversified, but we like things that face the consumer, given the growing importance of individual consumption in China. So anything that faces the consumer, we like. Which is, I think, a trend that most investors are looking at. And then the other thing is anything that addresses what we're going to be talking about later, which is the aging population as well, and the demographic trends. So the fact we're going to end up with a larger and larger retired population, anything that addresses the needs of that, whether it's healthcare or other retirement needs, are things that we're looking at carefully.
Yeah, and for now, it seems that all the people are struck by the Trump economics. And are there some attractive economies, either it's developed economies or developing economies, that you think that the investors should focus on, find some opportunities?
Well, the one that everybody the economy that everybody likes in the world is India, because of the long-term demographic trends and how easy it is to increase productivity there as well from low levels. So if you've got productivity growth and demographic growth, then you end up with very high levels of economic growth over time. So I think there's really interesting opportunities in India over time.
Yeah. How about China's real estate industry?
China's real estate industry, again, we were generally exposed to retail and commercial and office, and that we've made successful investments with successful partners over the last 10 years, and we continue to make investments. So we invested in a number of, in particular, retail developments last year with Capital Land, with Longfor, and we continue to invest with Goodman in our logistics real estate as well.
Yeah, thank you. Really enjoyed.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Now we need you to